Hi guys, back again with us at Recap in Minutes. We really don't know about the future. Surely what we imagine in the future will be increasingly sophisticated technology. Then what if the situation in the future is the opposite? That was what the military soldier named Joe was feeling, which were used as guinea pigs in experiments preserving humans for a long time, without causing aging by means of hibernation for years. Joe was chosen because he lived alone without a family so that the police could not easily track him down if he disappeared. Forced by his friend, Joe was also willing to become an experimental candidate in the experiment. It is the same with Rita, a woman who works as a prostitute and also lives alone. Promised to delete her criminal track record, she was willing to carry out the experiment. The trial is planned to last 1 year. They both get ready to do the experiment by entering a chest with sophisticated technology. Rita revolts at first, but Joe assures them that they'll be fine. By putting medicine into their bodies, they finally fall asleep. Unexpectedly, the company that handled the experiment was involved in a scandal to erase Rita's criminal track record, causing his headquarters to be destroyed. They also forgot about the person sleeping in the chest. As long as Joe and Rita fell asleep in the chest, humans experience stupidity from year to year and the human population is increasing. Until the year 2505, the experimental chest occupied by Joe and Rita was buried in garbage that had piled up very high like a mountain. Because the garbage that has been piled up very high, there was a great garbage landslide disaster there. As a result of the disaster, Joe's experimental chest was brought up to the house of a man named Frito and broke the window. Because he heard Joe awakened from the experiment chest, he kicked Joe out of his house because he was annoyed. Joe, who felt confused, began to look for help. Joe also saw the atmosphere there, which was very different the last time before he entered the experimental chest. He met the crowd and asked them. But the people looked idiots and aggressively heard his question. Joe was kicked out of there. Joe is still feeling hallucinating and looks for a hospital. Hospitals are usually clean, in fact they look dirty and neglected. Hospital services are very strange and all services are replaced by machines. Joe was still thirsty from the confusion. When Joe wanted to drink water there, he saw the green water. He asks for ordinary water, but the other person laughs at Joe's question. Finally he did an examination. He was asked to insert an instrument into his mouth, ears and buttocks. While he was waiting for the doctor, he took a flyer. The printed brochure reads 2505 on it. Joe, who saw it, only thought that it was just a joke. But there is something strange after he saw Bill's hospital payment date, which showed that it was the year 2505. Joe realized that he had slept for 500 years. Joe, who was very surprised, immediately looked out the window to see the situation there. Hospital employees are suspicious of Joe. The suspicion is reinforced when he sees Joe has no tattoo on his arm. The employees immediately panicked and sounded an alarm. Tattoos are useful as a means of payment and identity, so that if someone does not have it, he is considered a top-class criminal. He also ran out of the hospital without paying. Joe also enters a cinema, which shows a film that shows a video of the ass for 90 minutes. But the people inside the bishop looked happy and thought it was funny. That night, Joe is arrested by the police on the grounds that he was stealing at the hospital. Joe was finally in prison. Until finally during the trial, he was put into a birdcage and then thrown at the trash by the people there. In another place, Rita, who woke up from her sleep, began to walk for help. She tried to call her friend, but her attempt failed. Then suddenly she met a man there. She thought the men there were stupid. By teasing him a little, Rita could get money from that stupid man. Joe is imprisoned, escorted to a place to get a tattoo as identification. After that he was escorted to do an IQ and trait test. The questions given were very easy for Joe, like the test for kindergarten children. As a result he got the highest IQ rating in America. His life began in that ridiculous prison. Joe decides to run away by fooling the security guys, and goes to Frito's house for help. Joe finally explains his situation to Frito, but Frito looks confused and just dumbfounded by Joe's story. Finally Frito tells Joe that a time machine was created there and only Frito knows its place. Joe, who becomes a fugitive, is followed up to Frito's house. Before the door to the house was smashed, Joe and Frito escape by passing through the broken window and boarding Frito's car. Until finally, on the road Joe met Rita and told to come with them. Joe, who is still a fugitive, was followed by the police walking behind them. Because Joe's identity tattoo was accidentally scanned, their car was instantly recognized. They got out of the car and immediately fled from there. The stupid policemen thought they were still in the car and were immediately set on fire. Then they continued on their way to the time machine. On the way, unfortunately Joe was caught by the police and taken to a house they called the White House, where the president lived. There Joe meets the ministers, who look not like the ministers of his time, but look strange and stupid. Who said that he would be appointed a minister, because he had an IQ test that exceeded the average person there after he took an IQ test in prison. Then Joe met Camacho, a porn star and president there. Joe also felt that he did not think that the man in front of him was a president. Until his time at an event organized by President Camacho, he was introduced as Minister of Agriculture. He was assigned to overcome the growth of plants there. Joe invites Frito over there to tell him where the time machine is. And they all came to a dry and arid field. Joe carefully orders Frito to come over and hand him a map to the time machine. Joe wants to take Rita to the time machine, but they are watched by the police there. They also walked to a place they could not see. Joe also showed a paper containing a map given by Frito. When the two of them opened the paper, they saw a silly map drawing like a child's scribble. They also realized that it was true that the people there were very stupid. They went back to where they were all. Joe realized why their plants weren't growing. There Joe saw them watering the plants using green water, which was none other than soda. Not only plants, animals and babies were given the drink. Joe said that all that was needed to deal with the dead plant was watering it with plain water. Which is where they consider ordinary water only for toilet water. They believed and began to water the plants with plain water. Joe is attacked by soda drink workers who lose their jobs at the green water factory before the attempt to grow the plant is successful. The company went bankrupt because no one bought the green water, so the workers were laid off. Joe was arrested again and received rehabilitation. Which is where the rehabilitation is meant to torture them to death. Finally, the rehabilitation process begins. Joe, whose leg is chained by a large rock, is ordered to enter a small car to fight two very large war cars. Rita and Frito also watched Joe's program to be in rehabilitation, because Rita couldn't bear to see Joe who was going to die. She walked to the window and saw the flower Joe had planted had grown. Rita tells Frito and they hurry to get to where Joe is. On the way there, Rita saw green plants growing in the fields. However, in the middle of that Joe was trying to save himself by fighting two big cars there. With his intelligence, he got out of the car and the two cars collided. President Camacho, who saw that, fell silent. Rita and Frito, who had arrived there, bribed a cameraman who was there to cover the plants that had grown in the fields. Rita also took over the broadcast control room by fooling a fat man. Meanwhile, Frito escorted cameraman to the field. Because the cameraman did not give his camera, Frito hit him and the camera bounced and recorded green plants that began to grow there. When Joe's life was at a risk, suddenly the plant footage spread all over the rehab arena. Frito took the fallen camera and began to thoroughly record the plant. Joe, who almost died, was finally helped by President Camacho and called Joe his savior and forgives him. Finally Joe was released and they partied. Joe said they had to get to the time machine immediately. But Rita refused because she wanted to start a new life there. President Camacho also appointed him as vice president there. Because he didn't want to leave Rita alone there, Joe finally decided to stay. Unexpectedly, it turned out that the time machine that Frito meant was a train vehicle that presented a view of the state of the previous years. Finally, Joe was appointed as president and Frito as vice president. Not only that, Rita, who was a prostitute, eventually became the wife of a president. Joe and Rita finally have 3 of the smartest children in the world, and Vice President Frito finally married 8 wives and had 28 of the dumbest children in history. Okay guys, so that's the story of the Idiocracy movie, which has a funny story and a fresh storyline. From Joe, who is only a soldier who has an average IQ, to now being a president and becoming the smartest person in the world. Until here, the video from us. Just keep on watching and see you.